So let's discuss the 4 reading profiles from the simple view of reading. So the simple view of reading just says RC equals D times LC, which is to say that reading comprehension is the product of decoding and language comprehension. When we mention decoding, we're talking about the ability to translate print into spoken words, and language comprehension is the ability to understand spoken language. So let's look at these 4 profiles. Within each aspect, so decoding and language comprehension, there's an aspect where it's strong and there's one where it's weak. And the combination of these will make each different profile. So let's start with strong comprehension and strong decoding. Strong comprehension and strong decoding makes for the profile of a typical reader, where the characteristics are that students read fluently and understands. The instructional need in this case is to extend vocabulary. If a student has strong comprehension and weak decoding, this is the profile of a student with dyslexia, where the characteristics are that a student will understand when listening, but struggles to understand when it's in print. The instructional need is additional instruction in phonics and decoding practice. When we look at a student who has weak comprehension and strong decoding, this is the profile of a hyperlexic student. The characteristics are that they can read fluently but can't explain what they read. The instructional need is instruction in oral language and comprehension. And lastly, there's the possibility of weak comprehension and weak decoding. This is the profile of a student experiencing mixed difficulty. So the characteristics is that there are overall reading challenges, and to target this, there needs to be intensive dual focus intervention. Criteria 7, evidence-based instructional approaches that support reading and writing development skills. So previously we talked about the reading and writing development skills, including oral language development, phonemic awareness, decoding skills, printed word recognition, spelling, reading fluency, reading comprehension, and written expression. So what we're going to be doing in this section is talking about different evidence-based instructional approaches that support each one of those skills. And some of those instructional approaches that we'll talk about are interactive read aloud, Orton-Gillingham approach, Elkin sound boxes, sight word instruction, choral reading, transactional strategy instruction, reciprocal teaching, and SRSD. Let's start with oral language development. And the approach that I chose to mention for oral language development are interactive read alouds, where the teacher reads a story and the class has conversation around them. This is impactful for literacy learning because students are developing listening skills, listening comprehension, and their ability to make and verbalize connections between a text and real life, while allowing students on a variety of developmental levels to participate. Next is phonemic awareness. The skill that I chose to use was Elkin sound boxes, where students segment words into individual phonemes by moving tokens into a box. This is impactful for literacy learning because it helps students practice isolating and manipulating sounds in spoken words while catering to a multisensory modal of learning style, engaging hearing, sight, and tactile information. So the resources that will be necessary when using Elkin sound boxes are either print Elkin box templates and counters or online box manipulators such as the ones available at toytheater.com, which I've included a screenshot of just to give an idea of what it may look like. Decoding skills. The method that I've chose to reference is the Orton-Gillingham approach of building phonological awareness by a variety of methods such as practicing rhyme identification, letter sound fluency, phoneme segmentation, and other activities. This is impactful for literacy learning because it allows students to practice identifying and mapping together sounds and letters. Resources for instruction using the Orton-Gillingham approach can be found at Orton-Gillingham for All Shop. Printed word recognition. The activity I've chosen for printed word recognition is sight word instruction. So sight word instruction using multisensory techniques, which is teaching high-frequency words through visual, auditory, and kinesthetic activities, is impactful for literacy learning because when students automatically recognize common words, They can read more fluently without stopping to decode every word. Activities and resources that can be used to build student sight words inventories include word walls, flashcards, contextual reading, and games such as bingo, memory match, or scavenger hunts. Spelling. For spelling, I've referenced two approaches. One is the Orton-Gillingham approach, and the other is word studies with word sorts. So the Orton-Gillingham approach of learning and practicing identification of syllable types, particularly the Revlok syllable types, is impactful for literacy learning because students can combine different syllable types to assemble words. Resources for instruction can also be found at the Orton-Gillingham for All shop. With regards to word studies, using word studies with word sorts, where students categorize words by spelling patterns, is impactful for literacy learning because it helps students see common patterns and rules, which supports orthographic math. To build reading fluency, you can use choral reading or structured partner reading. Choral reading, where the whole class reads together, is impactful for literacy learning because it provides a safe, low-stress environment for practicing oral reading, improves automatic word recognition, builds confidence, encourages participation from reluctant or struggling readers, and helps students hear fluent models and supports accurate phrasing and expression. Structured partner reading, where the teacher assigns student partners, designates the amount to read, and teaches procedures for errors, is impactful for literacy learning because it provides repeated, supported practice in a cooperative setting, increases opportunities for immediate feedback and error correction, allows students to build fluency through guided oral reading, boosts accountability, and promotes social interaction, making reading more enjoyable and effective. For reading comprehension, strategies that can be used are reciprocal teaching or transactional strategy instruction. Reciprocal teaching is where students lead discussions about text using the 4 strategies for comprehension that have already been taught and modeled. This is impactful for literacy learning because it actively engages students in monitoring their understanding, promotes deeper thinking, and uses peer learning to foster independence in using strategies like predicting, questioning, clarifying, and summarizing. Transactional strategy instruction, where teachers model strategies using think-alouds and help students practice, is impactful for literacy learning because it helps students learn how to apply strategies like making connections, asking questions, or visualizing independently by hearing the teacher verbalize their thinking, essentially making the invisible process of comprehension visible. For written expression, a strategy that can be used is self-regulated strategy development, or SRSD. SRSD is a structured writing strategy that explicitly teaches students how to plan, draft, revise, and self-monitor their writing. This is impactful for literacy learning because it helps struggling writers learn to break down the writing process into manageable steps, improving content, organization, confidence, self-regulation, and effectiveness of student writing while encouraging them to take ownership of their own writing process. Resources such as graphic organizers, lessons, mnemonic charts, and goal setting and graphing sheets can be found on thinksrsd.com. Criteria 8, Content Area Literacy. So when we speak on content area literacy, we're talking about teaching students how to read different texts that they'll see in different contents. So instead of just reading a book, teaching them how to read articles, teaching them how to read bills, teaching them how to read experiment papers. So teaching them how to read different types of text that they'll see in math, science, and social studies instead of straight only what they'll see in ELA. So what I'll do in this section is I'll bring up 2 evidence-based approaches that can be applied to each subject, and I'll use them in relationship to one of the Georgia Standards of Excellence. For this presentation, I'm using them in relationship to the 8th grade standards, but I hope it also gives insight into how they can be used for other grade level standards.